Okay, welcome back to the Disturbing Illusion live stream. I'm doing more of these live streams because quite a few of you have recommended that I do this. People are saying they benefit from them. I like doing them because I like to stay on top of current news, and I know this RFK thing just happened this past weekend, so I'm a little late to the party on this, but I do want to give my thoughts on this. And let me just say, I try to give everybody a fair shake. I believe everybody deserves, well, maybe they don't deserve a fair shake, but I try to give them a fair shake because I want to do to others what I would want done to me. Politicians are on another level, and when I see hypocrisy, I can't unsee it. When I see just outright lies and deception, and when I see an individual who is being followed by a lot of people, not only letting those people down, but leading them down the wrong path, I'm not going to not say anything. Now, I'm going to be pulling up some videos here from people that I personally deem to be Democratic or Republican propagandists. And when you're a propagandist, you have no interest in truth. You only have an interest in promoting your political party. And typically, what we've seen historically, and if we don't learn from history, we're doomed to repeat it. What we learn historically is that political parties and members of political parties and donors for political parties and political parasites aren't there for you. They're there for themselves. They're there for profit. They're there to accumulate power. And that's just the reality of this. So I'm playing this thing by Brian Krasenstein, who he has decided that he is going to be a Democrat propagandist. Just because I'm playing this, don't try to soothe your conscience and get away from the truth and peg me as a Democratic apologist or propagandist, because I'm not. I don't have a dog in the Republican or Democrat fight. My dog is in the fight for freedom. Your freedom, my freedom. I believe in the Second Amendment. I believe you have the right to keep and bear arms. And it's not even so much that I believe in the Second Amendment. It's that I understand that nobody's got the right to keep you from keeping and bearing arms. And if they have that right, where did they get it? Why don't the rest of us have it? And is it legitimate? Thank you, JD, for that. The super chat. I guarantee you I will read all the super chats at the end of this video. First, I want to play for you what RFK Jr. said as he endorsed Donald Trump and what Donald Trump has said about RFK in the past, just to highlight some hypocrisy and doublespeak.
How to throw my support to President Trump.
RFK Jr. is a Democrat plant, a radical left liberal who's been put in place in order to help crooked Joe Biden.
I know the sound is probably a little low. It's a little low on my end, but this is all the way amped up. It's playing straight from Twitter.
The worst president in the history of the United States get reelected.
How to throw my support to President Trump.
Jr. is totally anti-gun and extreme environmentalist who makes the green news scammers look very conservative by comparison.
What Trump has said there is true. It's true. RFK Jr. wants to take your guns. Tulsi Gabbard, who just endorsed Trump yesterday, wants to take your guns. She doesn't think you should have high capacity magazines or what she calls assault weapons. And she's willing to write legislation that criminalizes tens of millions of Americans. Same with RFK. But then you got Donald Trump, who's pro extreme risk protection order, which is red flag laws, which is red flag confiscation laws. Oh, you can't hear it at all? Can you guys not hear it? It should, let me see. It should be, let's see, entire screen, share system audio. Let's see if you guys can hear it. I know it's low. It's low. Other videos will be better, but this one right here is low.
I support President Trump.
A big-time taxer, he wants to tax you. An open border advocate. He wants those borders to be wide open for more people to come in from prisons and mental institutions.
How to throw my support to President Trump.
And he's anti-military and he's anti-vet.
How to throw my support to President Trump.
He's an extreme liberal. He's radical left, and radicalized also are his family.
How to throw my support to President Trump.
So what we have here, we don't, these aren't aberrant. These are significant policies that Trump says he disagrees with RFK on. And yet now RFK and Trump have united, even though significant policies, they're at odds with on significant policies. So I just want to show you that's what Trump said about JFK, or that's what Trump said about RFK. But here's what RFK said about Donald Trump. Let me see if I can expand this for you so you can see it. This is what he wrote on May 10th, 2023, just like a little over a year ago. Just to quell any speculation, under no circumstances will I join Donald Trump on an electoral ticket. Our positions on certain fundamental issues, our approaches to governance, and our policies or our philosophies of leadership could not be further apart. And he's right. He agrees that their policies, fundamental issues, they're at odds with, they're in disagreement about, and they couldn't be further apart. RFK said that about Trump. Trump said that about RFK, and yet now they're in bed together. How does that even make any sense? Neither of them have changed their positions on any of the policies that they fundamentally disagree. And some people are like, well, yeah, he just said won't join on an electoral ticket, like won't be his vice president or whatever. No, people are under the impression that he is given, that RFK Jr. gave. Like Viva Fry says, there most certainly are circumstances under which you could and would join Trump on an electoral ticket. And what we're talking about, just something as simple as an endorsement. This guy right here is totally Trump. That's a shame. This person right here says, that's quite sad to hear. America is worth it. I don't believe you in the slightest. You are two singing the same exact song. Real MAGA. Okay, so we got all these people saying this stuff here. And I want to show you something else that Robert F. Kennedy wrote about Donald Trump. Insane. The Trump administration will not impose any limits on perchlorate, a toxic chemical compound that contaminates water and has been linked to fetal and infant brain damage. So he has joined a campaign who lets toxic chemical compounds invade fetal and infant brain tissue. That's what we're talking about here. This is how hypocritical this whole thing is. And this right here really takes the cake. President Trump scammed American workers. So now you have RFK, who has endorsed a person he believes scammed American workers. He promised to bring back manufacturing, raise wages, fix trade deals, close the carried interest loophole, and help small farmers. But everything President Trump achieved were things the Republican machine wanted. We got a tax cut for Jeff Bezos, deregulation for special interests, and giveaways to agricultural conglomerates. So you got RFK. This is in his soul to be against somebody like Trump. But now he's united so that they can beat somebody like Kamala, who's going to institute the same exact policies. In other words, Trump is for red flag laws. Kamala is for red flag laws. Trump is in the tank for Israel. Kamala is in the tank for Israel. Trump is going to trash the value of your dollar, just like we've seen in the 4 years that he was president. Kamala is going to trash the value of your dollar. And all the significant issues go right down the line, and they mirror each other. So it's all a dog and pony show. President Trump let the Bush wing of the GOP run all his agencies. His Interior Secretary was an oil and gas lobbyist. His Defense Secretary was a Raytheon lobbyist. His EPA Administrator was a coal lobbyist. His HHS Secretary was a pharmaceutical lobbyist. And his Labor Secretary was a lawyer for mega corporations. And RFK is right here. Just like Trump was speaking the truth about RFK, RFK is speaking the truth about Trump right here. Remember what Trump's promise was? He was going to drain the swamp and did nothing more than fill the swamp with more virulent, evil, infected swamp things. Remember the Treasury Secretary? Who was that? Steve Mnuchin. Who became the Commerce Secretary? Wilbur Ross. Why is that significant? Because Wilbur Ross is an employee for Rothschilds Inc. And why is that significant? Because back in the 1990s, Wilbur Ross and Rothschilds Inc. bailed out Donald Trump when he got upside down with Taj Mahal in Atlantic City. This is all a matter of record. And I don't understand how people think that Trump is going to drain the swamp when he is part of the swamp. He's a swamp thing in the swamp. The swamp thing is not going to drain the swamp because the swamp is his home. And I know people hate it when I say that, but same with Kamala. She's part of the swamp and she's going to fill the swamp. But people don't want to hear this truth because truth is treason in the empire of lies. And we truly live in the empire of lies. Truth is the new hate speech and truth is the first casualty in any war. And we truly have an information war that's going on right now. President Trump supposed, and people will still say, well, I'm going to vote for Trump because we can't have a Kamala Harris administration, even though they're going to do the same thing. If you looked at Donald Trump's, and I said this before Donald Trump became president, because I say this before anybody becomes president, at the end of this presidency, whether he takes one term or two, look at the national debt clock, he's going to exponentially increase America's debt and cause, and it's called, I call it transgenerational debt slavery. That means all the unborn Americans will be even more beholden and more shackled, more tightly shackled and more imprisoned by the central banking cartel, the Zio central banking cartel. And sure enough, when Trump started and when he finished, the national debt exponentially increased. Look what happened under Obama, exponential increase. Look at what has happened under Bush. Exponential increase in the national debt. Same thing with Joe Biden. What do you think? Do you think something different's going to happen whether a Kamala Harris or Donald Trump takes the helm in 2024? You really think something's going to happen different on November 5th? No, you're a fool to believe that it does. And if you don't learn from history, you are doomed to repeat it. And I know there are still people out there going, I'm still going to vote for Trump because he's the best thing we got going right now. I'll have a better living. Yeah, but you know what you're voting for? You're voting for evil. And even you will admit it's the lesser of two evils. And a lot of people make this case about, yeah, well, Donald Trump, at least the reason Tulsi Gabbard is endorsing him is because she probably wants to be the Secretary of State so that she can see to it that there are no more wars that are started. Yeah, but what about Raytheon, BAE, Northrop Grumman, and all the defense contractors who got an exponential boost from the Donald Trump administration? What about the military industrial complex that got an increase of almost 10, maybe it was over 10%. It was a ridiculous amount of money, extra money that he gave the military industrial complex. And even though he didn't on paper start wars, do you realize that he dropped over 46 bombs every single day of the 4 years that he was behind the desk at 1600 Pennsylvania Avenue? Do you realize that? 46 bombs a day. He dropped more bombs in 2017 than the most bombs that Obama dropped in 1 year in 2016. Look it up. It's called the Air Power Summary. You can look it up straight from the Pentagon. You can find out exactly how many bombs were dropped and how many missiles were launched under each administration. And that's probably just on this side of the books. Those are they cook the books. They have two books, one set of books for them and one set of books for the public. President Trump's supposed support for farmers, $28 billion, all went to big ag conglomerates, says RFK. We had the worst rioting and looting in this country had seen since the 60s under President Trump. That's true. He inflamed racial tensions and didn't keep us safe. He would have to prove that you inflamed racial tensions, or he did. Instead of using federal law enforcement to stop the rioting, Trump thought it was a good optics to let Democrat-run cities burn. President Trump bragged about arming Ukraine more than Obama did. That's true. He also walked away unilaterally from the intermediate range nuclear missile treaty with Russia, destabilizing our relationship. He also exacerbated tensions between Ukraine and Russia that ultimately caused war. So basically what you've got here is you've got an RFK Jr. completely against Donald Trump on a very fundamental level. And now he's joining him. Can you say hypocrisy? Now he's shaking hands with this guy who he claims is poisoning children with toxic substances like perchlorate. Check this out. Robert F. Kennedy said, let the children suffocate. That is the vicious message from President Trump in his proposed budget cuts for the U.S. Environmental Protection Agency for fiscal year 2021. Let me see. I'm going to play this right here. Check out this interview between Dr. Phil McGraw and RFK Jr.
You crafted a trail in your press conference. You're staying on the ballot in the red and blue states. In the swing states, people have said that this could come down to 15 counties in 11 different states, 11 of those counties in 7 states, including where we are right now, that you.
Oh yeah, not only I'm looking at the chat. Operation Warp Speed. Not only did Trump never apologize for it, he's still taking credit for it and patting himself on the back, and still considers himself the father of the VAXX. That's a separate issue, but it is a fundamental issue and one of the planks that Donald Trump stands on.
Said you don't want to be on the ballots there. You don't want people to vote for you there. Do you think you can be the determining factor in this presidential election because of the positioning? Of course, if they don't get to 270, if they tie at 269, whole different ballgame. But if this comes down to independents in those 15 counties in those 11 states, and you've given your support to the Trump candidacy, do you feel like you may very well be the one that selects the next president of the United States by your influence?
Well, that's possible, but I would have, if I had stayed on the ballot in the swing states. And what I've done, Phil, is we're taking my name off the ballots in 10 states that are swing states. We're leaving them my name on in the red states and the blue states, so people can vote for me without consequence.
This is such a silly argument, because what you're talking about is evil people stepping away from a political platform so that another evil person can emerge as the victor in a presidential election. You have to admit, as in favor of Trump as you are, you cannot sit there and say with a straight face or speaking truth in your heart that you agree with every single policy of Donald Trump. Similarly, those in the Democrat Party, even the most ardent supporter at the DNC who's just yelling their lungs out, they can't, with a straight face and an honest heart, say they agree with every single policy that Kamala Harris. Oh, that's right. Wait a second. She doesn't have a policy. But if she did, not one Democrat could say that I agree with every single policy. That means there are some policies and there are some viewpoints for your selected candidate that you would disagree with, vehemently disagree with. So if they do that thing which you disagree with, and I think that we can all agree that we don't want the government using our money to drop bombs and launch missiles that are going to tear families, individual family members to shreds in foreign lands. Nobody wants that rocket to have their name on it, but it will if you vote for that person who tells the military to push that button and blow up that family. Do you realize if the person you vote for commits an atrocity, they do it in your name and with your support and with your vote? Yeah, but I didn't vote for that. Yes, you did. You voted for the person who did that action. Let's say the candidate's name was Jeffrey Dahmer. And then Jeffrey Dahmer, made all these promises as he stood behind the lectern. He says, I'm going to do this. I'm going to do that. I'm going to make sure that I preserve human rights. But then 2 years into his presidency, he starts eating people and stashing them under the White House. He did it if you voted for Jeffrey Dahmer, he did that act of atrocity in your name. And it's absurd to think that when you vote for a political parasite, that they're going to make the lives of Americans better. They are not. History shows that they're not. They're just going to steal more money from you, making you more poor, and they're going to funnel that money to their rich donors, which they always do. They're going to commit other atrocities. And if you can make people believe absurdities like that, you can make them commit atrocities. And that's what's happening when you're voting. And somebody had said, Brian, you're always telling people not to vote. I have never told anybody not to vote. I'm telling you what voting actually is. I tell you that I don't personally vote. I tell you why I don't personally vote, that it is a fundamentally immoral action because you're voting for a fundamentally evil person and you're saying that you hope he or she does better than the other guy. but I never tell people what to do. You make your own decision. You chart your own course in life. I'm just here to give you the truth. And if at any point you don't think it is the truth, then we can talk about that.
They're not going to be scared. Oh, the bad guy's going to get elected. You know who's going to get elected in those states. So it allows people to vote for me who want to vote for me without any consequence. But what we recognize from our polling is that if I stayed in the race, it would have almost certainly swung the race to Vice President Harris, who was trying to throw me off the ballot in all of the states, ironically. But I thought that would not be a good outcome for, because.
So he's saying by staying in the race, he will inadvertently throw his support behind Harris and Harris will win. When in the final analysis, it doesn't matter who the people vote for, because from the perspective of the elites, every vote is a vote for them. Every vote is an opportunity for them to transfer wealth and power from the people to the elites. Every law that is written equals less freedoms for America. And they'll make laws, they'll write executive orders. See, here's the crazy thing about the Harris administration. You got Harris saying, vote for me and I'll fix things. Well, whose things is she fixing? On the one side of her mouth, she says that Joe Biden has done a great job and America is better off. On the other hand, she says, if you put me in the White House, I am going to fix things. Well, the implication is, without her outright saying it, is the things she's going to fix are the things that Joe Biden broke. And she's telling the people, if you put me in the White House, I'm going to make sure that I pass this law and I'm going to pass that law and I'm going to do right for you people. Well, she's in the White House right now. And I'm sure that Joe Biden, who respects her, will agree with her and say, hey, why don't we go ahead and change those policies right now? Why don't we go ahead and lower those taxes like you keep promising? Well, why don't you do it? Well, it's because the House is Republican controlled and they never go for that because that'd be political suicide for Donald Trump. Well, then write an executive order. They write an executive order about everything else. Why don't they write an executive order about lowering the taxes of all Americans? Do you think one American will be against that? Even Team MAGA would be for that. Be like, I don't care who lowers my taxes. Go ahead and do it. So they say they have the power to do it, but they're unwilling to do it. So either they don't want to do it, which it looks like that's true, or the bankers who control them don't want to do it. Regardless, it's not the president who's in control. It's not the president who's in power. He or she is not the ruler of the free world, the commander of the armed forces. I think it's more a mixture of choice B, and that is the banksters who pull the strings don't want them to do it, and the puppets who dangle from the strings don't want to do it. If they wanted to lower taxes, they would have already issued an executive order, and to hell with Congress, and they would have passed that thing, boom, like that, with popular support, I might add. So it's laughable that Kamala Harris gets behind a lectern at the DNC and says, I will do this, I will do that, if you elect me and vote me into the White House. Newsflash, Kamala Harris is already in the White House and she ain't doing none of that. And she doesn't plan on doing it if she becomes the president sitting in that seat.
I differ with her on all the issues, on the issues of war, on the issues of censorship, on the issues of chronic disease, and many, many other issues. I did not want to give the election. I didn't think it would be right to give the election to her. And our polling from the beginning showed pretty consistently that if I got out of the race, 57% of the people who were supporting me would vote for Trump. And so me staying in the race would have swung the race, very likely could have swung the race to Harris.
All right, so that's what he says on Dr. Phil right here. And Ron Filipkowski is also another Democratic propagandist, but I thought this clip was really interesting. Listen to what RFK says here.
And his pick as vice president is a salute to the CIA and to the intelligence community and to the military industrial complex. Their gravy train is going to continue. And his pick as vice president.
Wow. So not only is RFK fundamentally against Trump, he's also fundamentally against Trump's pick for vice president, but now he's endorsing him. Such hypocrisy. I wanted to play this, what Jimmy Dore says about RFK's willingness to endorse Donald Trump, and then we're going to actually look at the endorsement.
So this is amazing. They got a Kennedy. That the Democratic Party is so corrupt. The Democratic Party is so fascistic, so anti-democratic.
Just the Democratic Party is corrupt. Just I know what he's saying, and I agree, Jimmy. I agree with what you're saying, and you've been spitting a lot of truth, but you don't ever even it out across the board. Chris Cuomo even said the other day that it is a uniparty and that it's money-backed politics. And he pointed up at the suites that were all around the DNC and said, that suite right there, $500,000 for this 4-day event. Those are the people that are calling the shots, and the people on the stage are saying, we're going to regulate those people who are calling the shots. It's utter hypocrisy dangling right in your face. And that somebody like Jimmy Dore doesn't point that out really makes you wonder.
That they got Bobby Kennedy to endorse a Republican for president. That's how bad the Democratic Party is. And they're in collusion with the corporate media. The Democratic Party is the establishment party now. And they're in bed with the media.
The Democrat Party is the establishment party now? Guys, the establishment party is the uniparty. It's the Republicrats and the Demoplicans. There's no difference between the two. The money masters who own the Democrats are the same money masters who own the Republicans. It's kind of like what we saw in pretty much every major war in the last century. They fund both sides, and it's always to their benefit. And there's great truth in the statement, every war is a bankster war.
And the media is covering for them. They told you Joe Biden was fine up until 5 minutes ago. They all lied to you. The media, I mean. They're all cheap fakes. And this, you guys are conspiracy theorists. CNN is the liars. CNN is the conspiracy theorists. CNN are the evil. The MSNBC, the ABC News, the Washington Post, the New York Times. They're evil.
How about faux news? I was watching faux news the other day, and they were talking about how ABC, NBC, CBS, CNN, that they're all just outlets for the Democratic Party. Yes, I agree. But you hypocritically make that statement because faux news is an outlet for the Republican Party. What the heck is going on here? Apparently, there's somebody in the chat room who wants a whole lot of attention saying Brian's keeping his audience in the dark because Brian won't say what I say. I don't watch channels that I don't agree with. And it's bizarre to me that somebody would enter a chat room of somebody who doesn't agree to try to get their audience to think, well, they're keeping you in the dark. And I wouldn't for a second talk to this guy because I already tried to talk to this guy. And this guy is absolutely dishonest. This person is an absolute liar, a mean-spirited, not a good person at all, completely corrupt in character. So why would you ever give time to somebody like that? But yeah, this person wants to be paid attention to in the chat room and says that I'm keeping you in the darkness. Oh boy, because you don't say what I say. You know what? It's really interesting. There's a passage in the Bible that talks about the units in the body. It's like the finger is not the foot. The fingers have a job. The foot has a job. The head has a job. The torso has a job. You know, we're all a part of the same human body, essentially, and we all have different gifts and talents, and we all come at things in different ways. I don't have to say what you say, and you don't have to say what I say in the way that I say it. And why would I get mad at you for not doing the things that I am doing? It's just bizarre to me. Oh my gosh, the hand is not operating as the foot. The shin bone is not doing what the kneecap is doing. Very crazy.
And they're bought by the people who don't give a shit about you. It's all smoke and mirrors. All of it. So
all of it, including the Republican Party.
This is groundbreaking what's happening in politics right now. These Republicans cheering a populist message that you would think was supposed to come from the Democratic Party, but it ain't. It's coming from the Republicans. Crazy. people are asking, am I really falling for this? What do you mean falling? What does that mean? Well, at least they're saying it. First of all, I certainly trust the people are saying, can you trust what they're saying? I trust Bobby Kennedy, what he's saying. Certainly. I do.
Now, that's why I played all this stuff before I played Jimmy Dore, because Bobby Kennedy, Robert F. Kennedy Jr. isn't even honest with his own heart. He's spent a great amount of time and resources and airtime to express the fact that he completely, fundamentally disagrees with Donald Trump on some major, major issues. These aren't backdoor issues. These are upfront issues. And Trump has spent the same amount of airtime criticizing, not just criticizing RFK Jr., but dogging him, saying he's more radical than the Green New Dealers. How can you even get that radical? And yet Trump is not going to welcome him. And RFK Jr. is going to shake his hand and say, hey, we're all working together. Let bygones be bygones.
Trump didn't start any wars. He's the only president that didn't start any wars.
Didn't start wars, but did give the defense contractors a big increase along with the military industrial complex, and dropped a lot of bombs and launched a lot of missiles. Trump did.
So, and the deep state tried to kill him. So I made that point on Benny Johnson.
The deep state tried to. If the deep state wants you dead, you are going to be dead. I don't buy this. Deep state tried to kill Trump is just laughable to me. First of all, there's no such thing as the deep state. There might be levels. It might be the lies and deception and the evil might be compartmentalized so that they can increase the deception. But there's only the state and there's you. There's red and blue, which is the state, and then there's you, the individual. And the state, the government, is always against the individual. Deep state, call it what you want to, it's still government. And government, to govern, means to control. They aim to control you.
Johnson show last night. You say what you want. They're not trying to kill Joe Biden. They're not trying to kill Kamala Harris. They are trying to kill Trump. And why is that? Because Trump has the naive idea that the president should control the intelligence community and the president should control the oh, hi, baby. And the president should control the military. That's what Trump thinks. So then you realize that no president has controlled the military since JFK. None of them. And Trump thought the president should. And that's why they're trying to kill him. So you can't deny that. So it's not about falling for it. What do you mean?
You can't deny that. You got to prove that thing that happened on July 13th was actually real. You got to prove that. I mean, because just days after that, what you looked at on the screen was a perfectly good, untouched, completely healed, if it ever was unhealed, ear. Pretty crazy that people actually fall for that.
I just saw a stadium full of Republicans cheering for environmental policy, cheering for freedom of speech, cheering for ending wars.
Freedom of speech like Trump has when he completely shut down any anti-Semitism that they would consider anti-Semitism on college campuses. If you dared to criticize the state of Israel, you got to be kidding me.
Are you going to fall for that? You think all the people in that crowd are lying? You don't think they're genuinely enthusiastic? Because they are. So that's a populist message. And now, if I had more time, I would go to show you the video that Glenn Greenwald did where he discussed the difference between Trump Republicans and establishment Republicans. And so there's
let's talk about some of this. Increasing the national debt. I mean, exponentially increasing, given a raise to the military industrial complex, red flag confiscation laws. I don't know, Mike, I like take the guns first, due process second, a complete trashing. Even if he didn't implement that particular policy, he was against the Second Amendment from the get-go while he was saying he was for it, just like the NRA does. NRA is not for the NRA. I mean the NRA is not for the Second Amendment. The NRA is decidedly against it. How do you know, Brian? Because Wayne LaPierre, who's the president of the NRA, and the NRA itself got a bill passed into law and created the NICS instant background check system that I call the NICS instant infringement check system. It's like, oh, you want a firearm? Well, you got to go through the government. Big Daddy government's got to approve you for a firearm. That is called infringement. That is shall be infringed, not shall not be infringed. So the NRA is against the Second Amendment. Donald Trump's against the Second Amendment. Donald Trump criminalized tens of millions of Americans who had a piece of plastic called a bump stock. Most Americans didn't even know what it was. But the bottom line is, from the position of a man's character, he was willing to put the heads of tens of millions of Americans, Trump was, willing to put tens of millions of Americans' heads on the chopping block for a piece of frickin' plastic, and then say to the ATF and the FBI, go get them. So many people that he didn't release from prison that he could have, like Ross Ulbricht at the time, Schaefer Cox, Winehouse, Jeffrey Winehouse. He could have done something about Edward Snowden. He could have done something about Julian Assange, and he chose not to. As a matter of fact, he pretended not to know who Julian Assange or WikiLeaks was after 4 years of heralding and putting on a pedestal WikiLeaks, because WikiLeaks did a lot by exposing Hillary Clinton. And then he gets into office and he pretends not to know him. This is just, it's not even scratching the surface of Trump's evil. Saying that he was going to drain the swamp, and he filled the swamp with Steve Mnuchin for the Treasury Secretary. You've got to be freaking kidding me. Signing a $6.2 trillion stimulus bill that was only supposed to be $2.2 trillion, and $4 trillion just evaporated right off the top. Never signed anything with the T on it before. That is economically terrorizing Americans that you said you were going to protect and serve. Unfreaking believable. And again, there's more and more and more, but no MAGA follower wants to tell the truth about Donald Trump, that he is a swamp creature, filling the swamp with more pesky, evil, infected swamp things.
I think this is very real. And I think Trump is 70, 8 years old or whatever, and he wants to leave a legacy. And, the entire establishment loved Donald Trump up until he beat Hillary Clinton for president. Oprah.
Yeah, that's not the issue, Brian Martin. The issue is, are you going to let the political parasites that you know are political parasites? Here's what Brian Martin said. I'm not against you, man. I'm just going to pull it up on the screen right here. What can you do at this point? You can be a righteous person. You can do right. You can refuse to do what is wrong. That is, you can refuse to vote for evil. And whether that changes anything or not is absolutely irrelevant. Will you, as an individual, do the right thing? If it is to be, it's up to me. If I'm going to have a good world, I need to be a good person. And I can't be a good person when I'm supporting and throwing my name behind evil. Who would you rather be in office, as it will only be between two people? That's not the issue. The issue is, are you going to do right? I would definitely prefer one over the other. Then would you prefer poop soup to turd sandwich in a restaurant that offers only those two items on the menu? Or would you walk out of the restaurant and go, I'm not going to poison myself because my family depends on me, and if I slurp poop soup or eat a turd sandwich, I'm going to die? See, what voting is a very important component to the psychological operation, because it demoralizes the person who goes to the voting booth to put their name on and endorse evil. Think about it. When you go to the voting booth and you put a check mark, just picture a ballot, okay? You have a ballot. That's why I have this spoof shirt right here. Trump Fauci 2024, give us another shot. Give us another shot. It's a spoof because it's like, yeah, Donald Trump said he was going to save you, but he's calling himself the father of the VAXX. He technically could have fired Fauci, but he didn't. He criticized him a lot, but what did that mean? That led to nothing. It led to nothing. And if you went to the Moderna.tx website at that time, they've since taken it down, but they called their SHOT a program, an app, and the software of life. Those are the terms that they use to describe their concoction that Trump took credit for, calling himself the father of the vaccine. And those are the things that are swimming around in the bloodstreams of probably billions of people on this planet. That's what we're talking about. So as far as one would be better than the other, really? Really? What if you knew that behind the curtain, there was a puppet up the rear end of Trump, and a puppeteer hand up the rear end of Trump, and a puppeteer hand up the rear end of Kamala and Biden. What if you knew that it was the same puppet master controlling the same puppets? Would you think differently about it? Now, how do I prove that that is the reality? Look at their policies. Red flag laws, gun bans, increase in the national debt, which devalues the dollar, which means they're stealing from your time and laboring energies. Trump did it. Kamala Harris will do it. Biden's doing it right now. Obama did it. They're working for the same banking masters, and you can tell by their policies. You can tell by their actions. You can tell by their words.
I encouraged him to run. She's like, you and I should run together. She loved him.
Yeah, that's another thing. He said he would disclose those documents. He said it before. He said he was going to disclose all the September 11th documents too. Really? You disclosed all of them, huh? No redactions, eh? Just lie after lie after lie, man.
Oprah loved him. The women of The View loved Donald Trump. NBC loved him. They gave him his own goddamn television show for over 10 years. They gave him Emmy nominations. The establishment loved Donald Trump. The Clintons used to go. Bill Clinton goes to go golfing with him. Their kids are best friends. It was Hillary Clinton and Bill Clinton that encouraged Donald Trump to run for.
Oh man, I love this. I love when people say stuff like this, when they talk at this right here reveals this guy's heart. Read that. Nice remodel on your house that you did with the money raised for your niece. Just cannot substantiate it. Complete fabrication, complete lie. You know why? This is projection, because when somebody makes a statement they absolutely cannot substantiate, it shows you that that's what they would do if they were in the position that they are criticizing. I love it. Let this guy speak. This is why one of the reasons why I don't have moderators, because I don't want any message to be censored. The only thing that I will take down is if somebody starts spamming and just keeps hitting the, control paste, control paste, control paste. Then that gets in that right there gets into the arena of interfering with the freedom of speech of other people. That'd be like if there was 10 of us in a room and one person came in with a bullhorn and just kept spewing nonsense. It's like, you show that guy the door. It's like, you're not free to talk here and do that. You're free to talk, but you're not free to interrupt everybody else. So man, keep this stuff coming. I love it. I love that. Love that. It shows you what kind of cruddy person. God, from the abundance of the heart, the mouth speaks.
President in the first place. So it's nothing to fall for. And
by the way, I want to thank you guys for being here. I know this is a really, really small channel, and it's growing really, really slowly, but I appreciate you guys being here. I appreciate your support. I appreciate the likes and shares. Don't forget to hit the like button if you get something out of this content and if you think it's in accordance with truth.
The Democratic Party is unbelievably undemocratic. That's why they have super donors, super delegates. Republicans don't.
Okay, I'll tell you what, dude. Just prove it. Just prove it. Put your money where your mouth is. Show the docs. Put it up on some kind of a site where we can see it. Prove your assertion. The burden of proof lies on you. And if you can't prove it, you are an absolute liar. You're just making stuff up. Go ahead. Just prove it. We will give you a chance. No, I got to look at it, Canna. I got to look at it. I'm done now, but I had to look at it. I appreciate it though. I appreciate it though. Yeah. A good policy is don't feed the trolls. I agree.
Don't have that. That's why they use lawfare against their political opponents. The Republicans aren't doing that. Donald Trump didn't go after Hillary Clinton. He didn't lock her up. He didn't do any of that shit. Guess who's doing that? Joe Biden and the Democrats.
But shouldn't he have? Jimmy, shouldn't he have? Guys, do you remember? It's like, Hillary Clinton said something to the effect, it's a good thing you're not president. And he said, yeah, because you'd be in jail. He had the power. He had the apparatus to actually investigate her. I mean, deeply just concentrate on one person that pretty much everybody knows is a criminal And all he had to do was bring her to trial and make sure that she got a fair trial and then went to jail for the rest of her life. But he actually said in a video the other day, 2 or 3 weeks ago, recorded 2 or 3 weeks ago, actually, I protected her. He admitted that he protected her. On the day of his inauguration, at the inauguration dinner, do you remember Trump saying, I got a lot of respect for those two people, talking about Bill and Hillary Clinton? You got a lot of respect for somebody who decimated millions of Americans during the course of her political career, not to mention specifically offing a whole lot of other people by mysterious means. You should, Jimmy, if you're watching this, you should have a serious problem with Trump when he had the reins of power and could actually execute justice, at least that's what we're told, and then not doing it on one of the most dastardly people in American history. You should have a big problem with that. Because it does, at that point, it's not weaponizing the DOJ. It's actually it's actually highlighting and bold and italicizing and underlining the justice aspect of it. But now we know it's the Department of Injustice. And we know that nothing is more unjust than letting a person that you know is guilty go free. Unbelievable that Jimmy Dore is actually saying this and not really letting it sink in what it actually means.
So there's nothing to fall for. It's I'm sticking my head down the street and I'm reporting back what I see. That's what's happening. I'm not falling for anything. I'm telling you what's happening. There's a stadium full of people cheering. I just came from a stadium full of people cheering for hatred, division, and for war. They're cheering for war. They're cheering the other way. Those people were cheering for mandates, and they're cheering for censorship, and they're cheering for war and division and hating your neighbor. I just came from a stadium full of people that did that all week. And now here's a stadium full of people doing the exact opposite. So there's nothing to fall for it. These are just facts.
Amazing. So here's the actual endorsement. Let me see. It's very short. Let's go over some of this endorsement.
Tonight, I'm very pleased to welcome a man who has been an incredible champion for so many of these values that we
incredible. Now RFK Jr. is an incredible champion when basically Trump just got done saying, and we just watched the video where he is a crazy liberal loon.
all share, and we've shared him for a long time. I don't think too many of you people have heard of him. He's very low key. He's a very low-key person, but he's highly respected. He is a great person. I've known him for so long. For the past 16 months, Robert F. Kennedy Jr.
I'm telling you, people just turn their minds off.
Have you ever thought about your blood flow?
Sorry about the commercial here.
He's a very low-key person.
Talk about
Biden administration
man,
finally
there's a
agreed.
lot of ads on this. Talk about cognitive dissonance and Stockholm syndrome. I don't want to get a copyright. They're playing the Foo Fighters song, There Goes My Hero. All right, let's get to this. Let's see what Trump says here.
And he deserves it. He deserves it.
That's what the DNC does.
For the past 16 months, Bobby has run an extraordinary campaign for President of the United States. I know, because he also went after me a couple of times. I didn't like it. And I mean this sincerely. Had he been allowed to enter the Democrat primary, he would have easily beaten Joe Biden, but they wouldn't let him in. They put up rules. I've never seen rules like he had to have 65% of the vote in order to run, little things like that. His candidacy has inspired millions and millions of Americans, raised critical issues that have been too long ignored in this country, and brought together people from across the political spectrum in a positive campaign grounded in the American values of his father, Robert Kennedy, a great man.
But what about the Green New Deal? What about him being just a crazy individual who's got crazy ideas, Trump? And nobody can question him because he's behind the lectern and there's not a question and answer. And when you do ask a question like that, they don't like it. And then when they do try to attempt to answer it, answer for their hypocrisy, they can't do it. Not in truth. So in politics, it's devoid of any kind of truth because the truths that they speak, they mix with lies, and a truth plus a lie equals a lie.
And his uncle, President John F. Kennedy. And I know that they are looking down right now and they are very, very proud of Bobby. I'm proud of Bobby. You want to know the truth? And I don't think I've ever introduced anyone that got applause like he just got. I must tell you, I don't think it's true. I don't think I've ever introduced anybody that got applause like that.
Trump is ever the WWE showman.
Amazing. It's true.
Like a high school pep rally. Just turn your mind off. The world doesn't matter. Truth doesn't matter. Let's just go ahead and chant our heads off.
After I can't even believe I have to say this, nearly assassinated in Pennsylvania last month, Bobby called me to express his best wishes. He knows firsthand the risks incurred by leaders who stand up to the corrupt political establishment. When you stand up, you bring on some trouble for yourself, but you have to do what's right. You have to do what's right for the country. I will tell you, we are both in this to do what's right for the country. That's one thing I can tell you.
Wow. What lies?
He lost his father and uncle in service to our country, and Bobby himself was subject to repeated threats to his safety during the
that's what the Kennedys were doing. They're serving our country.
Course of his campaign while being denied protection by the Harris-Biden administration. And this is a tribute in honor of Bobby. I am announcing tonight that upon my election, I will establish a new independent presidential commission on assassination attempts. And they will be tasked with releasing all of the remaining documents pertaining to the assassination of President John F. Kennedy.
Oh, God.
And they will also conduct a rigorous review of the attack last month. But I tell you, I have never had more people ask me, please, sir, release the documents on the Kennedy assassination. And we're going to do that. And I also want to salute Bobby's decades of work as an advocate for the health of our families and our children. Nobody's done more. Millions and millions of Americans who want clean air, clean water, and a healthy nation have concerns about toxins in our environment and pesticides in our food. That's why today I'm repeating my pledge.
This is the very thing that RFK Jr. said in this tweet that he was against Trump for. Just as a reminder. Trump administration will not impose any limits on perchlorate, a toxic chemical compound that contaminates water and has been linked to fetal and infant brain damage. This right here, talking about how dangerous. He's saying, let the children suffocate in this tweet. That is the vicious message from President Trump and his proposed budget cuts for the U.S. Environmental Protection Agency. for fiscal year 2021. And now here's Trump saying this thing.
To establish a panel of top experts working with Bobby to investigate what is causing the decades-long increase in chronic health problems and childhood diseases, including autoimmune disorders, autism, obesity, infertility, and many more. We want every child in America to grow up and to live a long and healthy life. So I just...
All right, let's see what Kennedy says here. Kennedy's taking the mic.
Thank you, President Trump.
Just in case you haven't seen this. Thanks, Alex. JD, I appreciate that. Maverick.
Thank you.
I'm not sure about that.
A few hours after the assassination attempt at Butler, I got a call from a safe food advocate named Kelly Means, who's been fighting for many years to try to end the corruption at CDC and FDA and USDA. And these...
You know what? At this point, and I've said this before, at this point, I want Trump to win because I want people to see that nothing's going to change. The debt's going to increase. The dollar is going to continue to be devalued. There's going to be regulations and rules and laws written that make us less free, just like what happened in the last four years of his administration. But I just don't think that that is going to wake people up from their slumber. Do you? Do you think another 4 years of doing the bidding of the banksters is going to change Team MAGA's mind?
Institutions, these regulatory agencies are actually run by the big food processing companies.
Yeah, I agree. The FDA, the EPA, the profit incentive, for example, that the FDA has is crazy that they even have that kind of situation in play.
Ag and the chemical companies that they're supposed to regulate.
I know.
And he said to me,
it shocks me every day, Hyper.
Advising me for many years and on my campaign. And he told me that night that he was also advising President Trump. And he asked if I would talk to President Trump. And I said, of course. And about a few minutes later, I got a call from the president. And we talked. We had a very good talk. And then he invited me to come see him the next day. And I went to Minneapolis and saw him. We met again a couple of weeks later in Florida. And we talked about, not about the things that separate us because we don't agree on everything, but on the values and the issues that bind us together. And one of the issues that he talked about was having safe food and ending the chronic disease epidemic. Our children are now the unhealthiest, sickest children in the world. Don't you want healthy children? And don't you
want healthy children? Every election is somebody standing behind the podium or the lectern saying, I'm from the government. I want to be a part of the government and I want to help. Remember what Reagan said? The 9 most terrifying words in the English language are, I'm from the government and I'm here to help. Tashant said, do you suppose Bobby may have convinced Trump to reconsider his points on the healthcare crisis? I just don't. Presidents can only do what their banking masters allow them to do. And sometimes that includes throwing breadcrumbs to Americans because you can't make it so obvious that you want to set up a totalitarian regime. You have to throw some bones to the unthinking masses. I mean, give them bread and circuses and they shall never revolt. So they're going to be throwing us some bread so we don't revolt.
You want the chemicals out of our food? And don't you want the regulatory agencies to be free from corporate corruption? And that's what President Trump told me that he wanted. also told me
Free from corporate
that he
corruption.
wanted to end the grip of the neocons on U.S. foreign policy.
Oh, wait. How about now? What if he said, break the grip of the Zio cult on American foreign policy? What about that? What if he stood up there and he said, and I wouldn't believe him if they said it, but it would be interesting if they said it. We are going to stop all foreign aid, including the foreign aid in the sending of the military equipment and the artillery to Israel. What if he said that? He can't say that. Although, if you were a real 5D playing strategist, you would have them say that so that you could kind of allay the fear of people who are like, well, are you a Zionist or aren't you a Zionist? And then go, yeah, here's what we're going to do about this problem.
He said he didn't want any more $200 billion wars in Ukraine, that we could use that money back here in the United States.
Yeah, but he won't say that because he is totally a Zionist. Trump is a Zionist. Harris is a Zionist. Biden is a Zionist. Biden's the guy who said, you don't have to be a Jew to be a Zionist. Come on, man. You don't have to be a Jew to be a Zionist.
And the best way to build a safe America is to rebuild our industrial base and rebuild the middle class in this country. And don't you want a president who's going to get us out of the wars and who's going to rebuild the middle class in this country?
Yes.
And he told me that he wanted to end the censorship because the whole basis of American democracy.
Trump ending censorship. Trump, who, and I've showed you this on quite a few videos, at least 2 or 3 videos that that's coming to my mind. Trump is the very one who said, if you burn in the American flag, you go to jail for 12 months. Yeah, Trump is really for free speech, even though the corrupt Supreme Court made the appropriate decision when some guy burned a flag back in the 1980s or 90s, saying that's in accordance with, we know that you think it's distasteful and disgusting, but this is in accordance with freedom of speech.
Democracy is the free flow of information. And we know that a government that can silence its opponents has license for any kind of atrocity. And can you think of any time that you can look back in history and say that the people who were censoring were the good guys? They're always the bad guys, because it's always
the people who are censoring are always the bad guys, and you have censor in chief up on the stage right next to you. Not only will he censor you, he will take your arse to prison if you take your own American flag, your own China-made American flag, and you burn it on your own property. If he catches you burning an American flag, or if he catches you criminalizing or criticizing Israel on some college campus in America, well, you're going to be penalized. Yeah, the censors are always the enemies. Trump wants to censor. He wants to eliminate voices.
first step down that slippery slope to totalitarianism.
I agree.
And don't you want a president who's going to protect America's freedoms?
We're almost at the end of this.
And who
It's
is going to
disgusting.
protect us against totalitarianism?
Donald Trump, Donald Trump, Donald Trump.
And I want to ask you again, don't you want a safe environment for your children? Don't you want Don't you want to know that the food that you're feeding them is not filled with chemicals that are going to give them cancer and chronic disease?
Yeah, I do want to know that.
And don't you want a president that's going to make America healthy again? Thank you all very, very much, and God bless you, and God bless America.
Oh, the big hug, the bros, the Zio bros are just going to hug it up there. All words that are shallow. Here's what Hannity was saying about RFK Jr., and now he's since changed his tune. Check this out.
RFK Jr. Now, this is the same guy that wants to eliminate all drilling, all fracking. He endorsed Bernie Sanders' climate plan called he called the NRA a, quote, terrorist group. He wants to transform police.
I have got nothing personal against any of these people and would welcome any one of them on my show. I would definitely, and guys, don't understand that I understand I am microplankton in a sea of freaking whales. You know, compared to me, comparing me to Jimmy Dore, he's a whale. I'm a microplankton. Okay. But if Jimmy Dore ever wanted to come on the show, I would be respectful to him, but I would definitely want to ask him questions. It's like, man, you say a lot of right things, but then you mix it with a lot of stuff that it makes me question what the heck. I don't think you're stupid. I don't think a lot of these people are stupid, but they're definitely pushing an agenda. They're definitely trumpeting a narrative like, you know, Joe Rogan is constantly pushing this narrative. It's like, oh, I love Bernie. I love Tulsi. It says he's against Biden and Harris's policies, but he's, you know, respects Trump. It's really crazy. It's a continual psychological operation. You know, the intention of the psychological operation is to manipulate the minds of the masses so that they, the elite, and we know who the elite are, the people who own State Street, Vanguard, BlackRock, they own 80-something% of the stock market. They want to own every single home in America and then rent it out to people so they can't afford a home. They want you to own nothing and be happy while they own everything.
He's praised the radical, rabid anti-Semite and racist Louis Farrakhan. He endorsed, Al Gore, John Kerry, Barack Obama, Hillary Clinton, and claimed the 2004.
And that's all you need to know about how hypocritical RFK Jr. is. He supported and endorsed those people and threw a lot of money and support and endorsements behind them. And now he's going to support Trump. Do you really think RFK Jr. is on your side if he threw his weight behind Hillary Clinton?
Election was stolen. Worst of all, he actually blamed America for Osama bin Laden's terror attacks on a radio show he co-hosted in 2014. RFK Jr.
Okay, so that's just one thing that he said. Now, I want to give RFK. RFK was actually confronted with his hypocrisy, and I want to show you how politicians are and what politicians do. And RFK Jr. is no different from any other politician. Politics has been a career to these people, the Kennedy family, the Clintons, the Obamas, the Bush family. They have been parasitic leeches on America. And here's what a parasitic, psychopathic, forever career politician has to say when confronted with the question of, hey, you made some statements that you're kind of going back on. Can you explain yourself?
Welcome to Fox News Sunday.
Shannon, thanks for having me.
Okay, so let's get this out of the way up front. You and President Trump not always fans of each other. He posted on social media earlier this year, he's one of the most liberal lunatics ever to run for office.
Look at that. Don't waste any Republican or conservative votes on Junior, says Donald Trump. I don't know why it blurs this out. He's one of the most liberal lunatics ever to run for office, a phony radical leftist.
A phony radical left fool whose poll numbers are terrible and getting worse. The New Yorker said just a couple of weeks ago this: in a recent text exchange, Kennedy told one person that Trump was a terrible human being, the worst president ever and barely human. He is probably a sociopath. Now, I haven't read your text, so you can speak to that. But how did you get from that position to
Think
Friday
about
night?
that.
I haven't
Think
read your
about
text,
that
so
right
you can
there.
Speak to that. But the worst president.
Kennedy told one person that Trump was a terrible human being, the worst president ever.
And barely human. He is probably
barely
a sociopath.
human.
I haven't read your text, so you can speak to that. But How did you get from that position to Friday night?
Well, it became clear to me that I did not have a path to victory. 16 months of censorship, of not being able to get on any network really except for Fox. And I
don't like the way the interview, I like the fact that she cracked into this hypocrisy, but I don't like the way she delivered the question, because what she should have said is, do you still hold those views that Trump is barely human, that he's a disgusting individual? Do you think that he still holds the thought that you are a liberal lunatic?
In fact, when Ross Perot ran, in the 10 months that he ran, he had 34 appearances on the networks. I had 2 appearances in 16 months.
He's not answering the question.
The networks, I was blocked out from the debate. I had no path to victory. President Trump had been reaching out to me. And I talked to him a few hours after the assassination attempt, and we had a long conversation by phone. I then had 2 extensive meetings, and there were issues, the broad issues that were most important to me, the ones that brought me into the campaign, which was ending the Ukraine war, ending the censorship, and protecting children's health. We're all reforming our food supply, all the things that we need to do to make our children healthy again. Those are all things that President Trump also wanted to work on. And he invited me to form a unity government. We agreed that we'd be able to continue to.
He's not answering the question.
Criticize each other on issues on which we don't agree. But these issues are so important in their way of unifying our country. We need in this country to reach a point where we love our children more than we hate each other.
It's a good unifying theme that I think a lot of people could get around. It's how we get there. That's always the devil is in the details. Have you all negotiated over or talked about a cabinet position?
She let him go. She let him go. She started out by asking she was in the direction of asking a good question, kind of trailed off and didn't ask the pointed question. And she let him go. She let Kennedy get away with not answering the question. Does he still think you're a lunatic? Do you think he's still a disgusting human being?
Another position within a Trump government in exchange for your endorsement?
No, there's been no commitments. But I met with President Trump, with his family, with his closer advisors, and we just made a general commitment that we were going to work together.
What about the states where you're trying to get off of a number of swing state ballots to say, I'm going to stay on a number of state ballots, but in these swing states, I'm going to try to withdraw myself and ask my supporters, or at least you're telling them, think about supporting President Trump. Did you negotiate over which states you would try to withdraw from?
Yeah, I mean, we all knew which states they were. There basically is 10 swing states where my presence in the race would have helped Vice President Harris and would have harmed President Trump. So I'm going to get off the ballot in those states, and then we're going to stay on the ballot in 30 states. And, I'm encouraging people to vote for me in those states. Those are states.
I can only imagine that people who were supporting RFK Jr. in those swing states that he's withdrawn from, I can only imagine how they feel, because they're like, I thought you tried to convince me that you were different. I bought into your sales pitch that you are different. I was going to vote for you, and now I can't even vote for you. I've spent hundreds of dollars. I'm not saying me. I'm just talking from the perspective of a supporter of RFK Jr. But I've spent all this money and all this time, and I've door knocked for you, and I've hung flyers and put flyers under windshield wipers for you, and you're going to withdraw? I thought you were different. And now you're going to align yourself with Trump? Basically saying, I'm a better candidate than Trump, vote for me. And I bought into that. And now you're endorsing Trump and telling me that I need to vote for Trump too. It's kind of like when you have a Republican or a Democrat primary, and they spend each individual candidate spends the entire primary telling you, trying to convince the audience how bad this individual is and how good I am. And I'm going to change the country. And this guy's a joker. And yet, when they whittle them down and there's 2 men standing and then there's only 1 man left, then everybody who spoke against the guy, the last man standing, is now going to throw their support behind a guy they were trying to convince the audience not to vote for. That's how demoralizing it is for them. So the sock puppet politicians, the parasitic politicians get demoralized, and then the people who own and control and animate the sock puppet politicians, they get the politicians to get the audience to demoralize themselves by voting for the lesser of two evils. And now, because you have so many people letting go of virtue, that's why Samuel Adams said a general dissolution of morals and principles will more surely overthrow American liberties than all the force of the common enemy. A general dissolution of virtues and morals and principles. What's the best way to do that? By voting for evil, by supporting evil. And when you do that, America has lost. You have lost, because the battle was in your heart, and the powers that shouldn't be know that. They demoralize you. They take away your character. They get you to put your name on something that is abjectly, objectively evil. And that's it. That's it. Now they can come back and say, well, we started the war with your approval and in your name. Well, we racked up the national debt and put your progeny into transgenerational debt slavery, but we did it with your approval. You said we could do it. That's why I like what George Carlin said. Hey, when everybody's voting, I just stay home. I stay home. So if the winner, if the winner does something evil, it's your fault. It's not my fault. I didn't participate in the stupid game. I didn't choose to demoralize myself by voting for the lesser of two evils, but you did. And then people are like, but how's that going to change anything? Changing your heart and realizing, hey, you're not going to get me to commit to doing wrong and putting my name. All you have in this life is your name. It doesn't matter about your property. That's everything you've accumulated in this life is going to go to somebody else. Like they say, there's no U-Hauls trailing hearses. You can't take it with you. All you have is your name. A good name is to be chosen rather than great riches, loving favor rather than silver and gold. Isn't there a verse out there that says something like that? So you mar your good name, and people don't think they've marred their good name because everybody's marred their good name. And now they're trying to convince people, oh, I'm a good person. I just happen to vote for evil. I just happen to co-sign for war. That's what you're doing. You're co-signing for war. You're co-signing for missiles being blasted and bombs being dropped on villages that you've never heard of, blowing apart your fellow human beings because you decided to vote for the lesser of two evils. Well, that's not going to change if you don't vote. It's going to change for you. Doesn't matter. I mean, like the most important thing is not who wins an election. The most important thing is, are they going to do it with your approval? I don't understand what people don't understand about that. And yeah, you may be able to sleep well at night, but it's just because you've cemented yourself in cognitive dissonance. You've locked yourself in your own echo chamber. You're suffering from a serious case of Stockholm syndrome. You're a paid member of the cult of personality. That's what's wrong with this country, is people do not want to take individual responsibility for their own choices, and they choose to demoralize themselves. And a general dissolution of principles and morals will more surely overthrow the liberties of Americans than any foe, any external foe. While the people are virtuous, they cannot be subdued. But once they lose their virtue, they'll surrender their liberties to the first external or internal invader. And that's what you're doing. When you're voting, you're surrendering your liberties. You're saying, my vote, which is your life, which is your name, I'm voting for evil. I'm just voting for evil. Nobody made you do it. You walked yourself or drove yourself to the voting booth, and you're the one who pushed the button or pulled the lever and, pulled the curtain. And you're the one. Think about the insanity. I was going to say this. Think about the insanity of the actual ballot itself. You can't go, okay, I'll vote for him, but I'm not for war, and I'm not for hyperinflation, and I'm not for devaluing the dollar. There's no place to put any of that. It's just carte blanche. I am for everything that this guy will do in the next 4 years.
With the votes, they're either all red or all blue states where their votes are not going to change the outcome of the race. But in the states where I would have been a spoiler, I'm going to get out. So it's about 10 states.
Okay,
Such-
so there were
so
reports a
bogus.
couple weeks ago citing an official from your camp and also a Democratic official saying that there'd been outreach to the Harris camp as well to possibly discuss you working within the Harris administration in exchange for an endorsement of her. Is that true? And what happened with that?
I reached out to them on the same basis that I reached out to President Trump, and we actually talked to other
Yeah, I reach out to evil
presidential
people.
candidates, including
I reach out to evil people all the time. I want them to know, hey, I'm on your team no matter what. I was going to play the rest of this, but I just wanted to make the case that RFK Jr. is, just like all political parasites are, RFK Jr. is a hypocrite. Don't believe him for a second. Don't believe Harris for a second, or Biden or Trump or any of them. I mean, do what you want. It's your life. It's the path that you got to walk. It's the name you want to make for yourself. And you know what? It's no measure of good mental health to be considered well-adjusted to a profoundly sick society. If everybody in your zone of influence, or, let's say everybody in the world, 99% of the people in the world thought you were a great guy, but if you're not a good guy, hey, truth is still truth, even if nobody believes it, but a lie is still a lie, even if everybody believes it. The question is, what are you willing to live with? And, believe it or not, there's a lot of people out there that are willing to live with a lot of evil and supporting a lot of evil. So thank you to JD. Appreciate that super sticker. Thank you, Maverick, for that super chat. JD also with the super chat, and Greg with a super chat, and Hyper Spiky. Brian, can you believe how brainwashed the poor people are on each side of this mess? Astounding. I live in a state of being shocked and alarmed and astounded. So if you haven't done so already, subscribe to this channel, hit that like button. It really helps with the algorithm. Leave a comment whether you disagree or agree. I might start doing live streams where we do, live call-ins where I'll drop the link and we can, talk about things that you might disagree with. If you guys are interested in me doing that, put a 1 in the room. I am going to release another video. It's a pretty disturbing video on my Here's the Deal channel in the next 2 or 3 hours. I haven't done it yet, but I'm going to make a commentary about the beefed up security of this particular sheriff's department in one of the cities in our nation that is as Orwellian as you can possibly get. They have eyes everywhere. They gloat about it, and the budget is massive. So I appreciate you guys. I will see you in the next video. Remember, the price of freedom is now and will always be eternal vigilance, and indifference to this notion is the means of which people have and will secure their own oppression. Stop securing your own oppression and start today. I'll see you in the next live stream. Take care.